It is show time. My question tonight is do you bring joy in everything you do? So that's the question today. And basically, as a learner or student, when you go to school or when you go to learn something as a trainee, do you bring joy in what you do and bringing energy in what you learn? As a teacher, when you go to your class, when you go to your school, do you bring the joy along with you so that people around you and your students can feel it too? It's a good question. As a leader, when you go to your workplace with your team, do you bring the joy along so that when you are with your team, everybody can feel the energy? So that is the topic today. And some of you will say, well, it's hard to bring the joy in everything we do. And it is very true. Sometimes we're tired. Sometimes we didn't sleep well. We feel our mind is a bit clouded. We forgot coffee in the morning. The whole thing is sometimes joy is the secret ingredient that we need. Now, the topic I got today, because I'm listening right now to a book, and this is an audiobook by Brendan Burchard, and it's High Performance Habit. And one of them is this idea of finding ways to have the energy so that when you go and do what you need to do, you're clear about your goals, you have the energy, and then you can focus on what's important. So these are the topics we're going to cover today. If you're new here, my name is Alain Faber. I've been a teacher for more than 25 years, and I bring topics to this podcast here. And every week, I put the many videos from questions I've had from my students, questions I've had from friends, or topics I see on the internet which are of interest to me. So it's all part of the fun. So let's see. With respect to, next thing, this podcast is always divided in three parts. The first part is always with respect to the learner's perspective. So as a student, what can you do to learn better? The second segment is about teaching. How can you be better at what you do best? And the other one is about leadership. And when I think of leaders, it is about people that are part of teams. It could be you as a parent. It could also be when you are part of a group in your community. So this is how I organize my podcast every week. So let's see. My first topic today will be about the learning perspective. Is when you learn, how can you bring the joy to the place that you will learn? Excellent question here. So the reason why I say that is that if your student come to your classroom, do they feel that it's a great place to learn? If you are, as a teacher, as a parent, or otherwise, you're going to a place where you're being trained for something, do you feel the joy in learning something new? Or do you feel that's something you have to do and therefore it's not as exciting as it could be? So these are good questions. So my main idea here is that when you are to go to a place where you're going to learn something, the best thing for you to do is to come in with an idea of being curious. Because if you're curious, then you'll be more receptive to the new information coming to you. You'll be more willing to collaborate with others. And at the same time, if you have an idea that you haven't heard before, it will be easier to compare this new information with what you have in your mind so that you can evolve as a person and grow with what you know. So it's always interesting. The next thing that I think is important is that if you, as a place where students find the joy in learning, students will always collaborate more. Because collaboration is one of the steps where you're working with others, you're discussing ideas with others, and at the same time, you're comparing, you're testing these new ideas of the new information coming to you. All of this is quite important. And two tricks for me that I bring to my classes so that the learners feel better. The first one is to always find a way for students to bring their own grain of salt in what they learn. So sometimes if I have a project, if you have a chance to bring an interest of yours in what you have to do, then it's always more exciting because you are looking at what you need to do, the assignment, the reading, or the compositions, a lab in a science class. But if you bring your ideas of what interests you outside of the classroom, then at the same time you're doing something you like, you are working with what needs to happen in the classroom. So overall, you are bringing new ideas to the class, but on top of that, you're getting better at what you're already interested in. And that I think is a key part. Another aspect that I bring also is to have no homework. For the last couple of years, I've been giving less and less homework. And if I have a project that I give in my classes, I also give plenty of time in class to work on their projects. There's a few reasons for that. First reason is that if students are in class and it's a place where they are interested in what they're doing, then they will focus, work hard, and therefore they deserve to have some time for their own activities in the evening. And that's how I've been bringing to my classes this idea of focusing blocks of time for the learning so that you have blocks of time after school to do what you like to do. Because it's important, because you have to have learners to have a space where they'll be able to explore their own ideas in school and outside of school so that they can actually grow that way. Because that's how they can bring new ideas to the classroom, improve collaboration, and then make the learning environment exciting. So I think this is something that is quite good. Now, if you go to my second segment of this podcast about the teachers, that's the same thing. Well, as a teacher, when you go into your classroom, do you bring the joy with you so that students feel the joy when they come in? That's quite important here. And my colleagues always find it funny when I leave my desk, and often I talk to myself saying, "Oh, let's be great today. Let's do great things," or "It's time to have a great class." By doing that, it gives me a chance to focus on the fact that I'm going to see my students in a new classroom, in a setting. And if I'm positive as I go into the class, then my students will be more interested as well. So this is something that is quite important. And at the same time, something I've started in the last few years is to bring some of my ideas and interest in the classroom. It's been important because then I think students see me more as a human than just as a teacher. When I bring ideas, I talk about places I've been, where they've also been too, things I've discovered. I bring pictures to show what I've experienced. If I go for a hike outside, and then they bring their own pictures to show me what they've seen, it's always fun. It brings up the energy. Collaboration works much nicer. And I think overall it's a success. Now, for teachers, something that is important is to be able to have a place in the school where they can collaborate with other teachers in a positive way, regardless if it's pedagogy, there you go, or if it is about maybe discussions on common interest. When you do that, it gives a chance to bring up the energy to collaborate to do something great. Same thing with PD. If you have professional development and you bring the joy in what you do so that teachers feel that, oh, it's not just a workshop we have to do because the county or the school board wants us to do so. But if there's a joy in what we're doing, then you can bring this excitement back in the classroom and it makes a difference. These are all things to think about. And that after work, something that would bring the joy to teachers in class, but also in their lives, is to make some room for, I called it personal exploration activities. When you leave the classroom, when you have your personal evenings, weekends, you have to keep in mind that if you have your own fun and exciting activities, then it keeps you curious and in a way where you're learning more and more as you are doing this activity. And by doing such, you keep nurturing the joy in you in doing great things, and that is translated in your classroom. Now, I say that because sometimes at the end of the day, if I am tired at the end of the day, come home, and then I sit on the couch and I don't do much during the evening, I feel more tired. And when I go back to school, it's trickier. It's been tricky in May. So what I've been doing in the last week or so is to go for a walk in the morning, but also go for a 30-minute walk just after dinner. It gives me a chance to be able to go outside, enjoy the sun a little bit, and it gives me energy so I can be more effective in the evening to do something that I like. For example, this podcast right here. And the next thing I try to do as much as I can is to minimize the homework at home. Now, teachers will always say, well, there's always work to do at home. And I do agree. Now, over the years, I've realized that when I bring work home, sometimes I can work for an hour in evenings. Then I see double because I'm tired. It's slow. Then I go back to work the day after, and then my mind feels like it's cloudy. So the best thing I've learned in the last few days is to organize my day so that I can find time to do some marking. So I do a lot less conversation just for the sake of having conversations at school, so I can focus on doing marking during my prep time. Now I do, so this is the one thing I do. Second, often I stay at school for an extra hour after the bell. So the bell rings at 2:45, then I stay for an hour where during that time I mark for an hour. Because keep in mind that if you are in the groove of working and focusing, a good hour in the afternoon when you still have energy, this is quite useful, because 5 hours at the end of the afternoon it could be 7, 8, or 10 hours on weekends, because you're trying, you're starting, you're stopping, and it's always trickier because on weekends you feel like doing other things. Good. It does happen that sometimes on weekends I have to go and work. And something I've learned is that at home, it's always tricky. So I've learned that if I have marking to do, something I do sometimes is when I leave, let's say I'm a bit tired, I leave school, I go to a cafe, I get a coffee, and I mark for 1 hour, and it's focused. And then when I get home, I feel that I've accomplished something and I have more time for myself. For the weekend, it's the same thing. If I have to work, sometimes I make myself a coffee here, and then I go to the library, and then I mark for an hour and a half during the morning. And the reason for that is the morning I'm a bit more awake, I'm a bit more focused. So if I can do that in the morning, then I feel more comfortable. And then when I'm done, I have the rest of the day to continue. So these are things to keep in mind. So am I doing homework after dinner? Rarely in the last couple of years. First of all, I don't have the energy I used to have. Second, I'll try to leave work at work, and so I can focus on my personal life at home. Something to look into. The third segment of this podcast here is about how can you bring the joy as a leader to your group. Well, that's a good, interesting part. So I would say that the best way for a leader to bring joy is to have in his mind a great vision on where the group is supposed to go, so that they can refer to the energy of the group toward that common goal. Having a common goal is always helpful, because if people have energy but they're not focusing that energy, it doesn't mean that it's going to go towards your goal. So that's the first thing. Second, I think it's very important for leaders to have personal time during the workday to explore different leadership skills. And I say that because as a leader, we always learn to be a better leader. So that means that you have some ideas, some theories, you go in the field and you try them. You go and chat with your staff, with your teammates, with your community. And then you go and test your ideas so that you can have quick feedback on what you're learning. And then you can learn new tools so that you can bring the joy and the energy to your team. Because as a leader, if you don't necessarily have the energy, then it will be harder for your team to have the energy. Because the team, it's very hard for a team to support the leader when they have the job they have to do, keeping in mind that everybody have their lives outside of their occupation. On this, these will be the key topics for today. So my question to you is, what do you do to keep the joy in what you learn, keep the joy in your teaching, if you're a teacher, and keeping the joy in your group as a leader? Put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear and read what you have. On this, have a wonderful evening, hoping that tomorrow will be a joyful day. And keep in mind, often just taking a deep breath and exhale, and have this idea that being curious will bring some more joy in your day. On this, have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you next week. Take care.